Ah. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our presentation about empowering the individual to grow the community. As introduced, I'm Thorsten. I'm working since 2.5 years as an international campaign manager at GoEuro.
And I'm Kat Bacon, and just so it doesn't distract you throughout the presentation, that is my real name. And I'm also a vegetarian, fun fact. And I've been working at GoEuro for almost a year now, building an online community for them.
And that is GoEuro. I don't want to bore you too much with it, but just a few words. It was founded 4.5 years ago from Naren Sham with one simple goal, to create an easy-to-use app to buy train, bus, and flight tickets across Europe. And we want to connect small towns and villages, big cities, national and cross-border. Right now we have 20 million visitors per month. And that shows that marketing also plays a key role within our strategy. That leads me already to our agenda, where I will speak about the individuals and how brands can work and we work with influencers along the buyer journey, so along the marketing funnel.
Yep, and I'll talk more about the role that community plays for brands today, and also why we've seen such a big dramatic shift towards the need to work with influencers and to build communities. And a little bit later, I'll go through just a few simple factors that you should consider if you're thinking about building a community of your own. So I'll take it from here. Actually, first, could I just get, before we begin, a show of hands of who here is representing a brand today? Okay, quite a few. Be relevant for you. Anyone from an agency? A couple? Any students? Okay, it's a good mix. Any influencers in the room? You can say it, don't be shy. Okay, no one. That's fine, cool. I think for us, obviously we want to talk about the individual and the community, but first we should probably give an idea about who we're actually talking about. So when we refer to the individual, we're talking really about either a brand or an influencer, because essentially an influencer is representing their brand. And when we refer to community, this can be anyone from your fans to your customers, your ambassadors, or your followers. But it's not only important to determine who they are, but also the role that they play in relation to each other. Because although Thorsten will sort of go into more about the individual, and I'll speak more about the community, what we both agree upon is that one can't really exist without the other. In the ideal scenario, we have the individual whose primary objective it is to provide value to their community. And at the same time, they need to respect the expectations that their community has based on their value proposition. And here, the role of the community is really just to provide support and loyalty to that individual. But then we have the contrary scenario where the individual doesn't live up to their value proposition and is no longer providing value. And here you see the role of the community start to shift to become that of a gatekeeper in order to ensure that that individual stays consistent and authentic to its brand values. So, sorry. Yep. So in a little, Thorsten and I will explain, some of the beneficial reasons to work with influencers and also to build communities. But I also wanted to talk about the why. So why have we seen such a big shift towards experiences today, as opposed to more measurable outcomes that we saw in previous economic cycles? And so to illustrate this, I wanted to use the example of coffee, because I love coffee. And basically, what we see in the beginning, in the commodities economy, is coffee in its basic raw form. And the only business imperative here is to control supply and availability. Then once you manage to get that under control, you're able to package that commodity to serve individual needs, and then it becomes a good. And then at some point it's no longer sexy enough just to have a good that you buy, and so we start to render a service based around that good. And then as quality starts to improve, what we see another shift again towards experiences. And this is kind of where we're at today, and I think Starbucks is a really good example of this, because Starbucks doesn't sell coffee, they sell experiences. Because you don't spend, you know, €7 on a double frappuccino decaf mocha latte with protein powder because it's good coffee. You actually spend that money because they're able to customize that experience to your individual needs. So much so that we've almost seen another shift since then towards this kind of model, which I think really reflects where we're at today, where we've taken what was once a very basic commodity and turned it into almost a scientific methodology. One that admittedly I definitely subscribe to myself. So we know that, you know, there are 1,000 ways today that we can experience coffee, for example. And the role of brands has really become to try to convince the consumer to choose the experience of their specific blend. And what it really comes down to, I think, and I guess as marketers we probably want to cover our ears when I say this, but is trust. Because of course consumers don't trust brands. We're often overselling and under-delivering just to try to grab their attention. And that is how the door to influencer marketing sort of swung wide open. Because what we know from influencers is that they understand how to build brands from trust. They don't start out generating revenue, they earn the right to influence by providing a unique value, by being authentic, and also by respecting the needs and the expectations of their communities. And I think as brands, we can learn a lot from how to build trust from within, which I'll go into a little bit later when I talk about branded communities. But as we're on the topic of influencers, Torsten will explain how they fit into the marketing funnel.
Yep, thanks, Kat. And I also want to start with a question. Has any one of you recently asked a friend for a recommendation before purchasing a good or a service in here? Okay, that is a bit wondering, because the survey said that 75% of consumers ask their social network before actually buying something. So, and that is just a simple human reaction, which was already described in 1984 by Cialdini in his 6 principles of persuasion. I don't want to go too much into detail, but I think as we are also at a university, let me quickly go through the 6 principles. So reciprocation basically describes the behavior of if a human wants to equalize a situation when getting something for free by giving something back. Commitment and consistency is split into basically 2 behaviors. One's commitment and consistency. So if I get you to commit something, then you tend to show the same behavior to just stay consistent in your action. So you almost create a small habit. Scarcity is the fear of missing out, and it's actually simply as that. I ask you, if you ask a friend and about a recommendation for buying a good, and if someone is uncertain, then it's basically he's looking for others' guidance, and then he's more likely to go to an authoritative person to ask for that recommendation. Social proof is almost self-explanatory, and if someone from your immediate social network is liking a product or a service, then you are also more likely to try that good or service. That is this point. Yeah. 1984, Cialdini didn't describe with liking the thumbs up at Facebook. He more described if you're liking a brand over another, then you're also more likely to buy or try this good. And maybe you are already seeing where I want to get to. This authority, social proof, and liking are 3 principles which describes the nature of influencer. Authority, what Kat already described, is the trust he delivers. The social proof is coming through the social networks and the community following him on those networks. And the liking, here I mean really also the functionality of the likes and the hearts and everything, how the community react to that influencer. And as a company, we can use these 3 key principles by working with the influencers. so that you can increase the trust and popularity by working with them and speaking to the community, to spread also the conversation through the influencer in the community to transport your key messages. And as it's not just a simple theory, Adweek did a research, and 40% of the servants said that they purchased a good after they saw it with an influencer. And now I want to go back into the funnel and show you some examples how brands and we are working with influencers to basically get into their community. Before that, I want to show you the marketing funnel we are using at GoEuro, but which was initially developed by Google and introduced by them. C is the stage where we want to raise awareness and speak to consumers which might be interested in your product. Think and consideration is already where the consumer is showing a commercial intent. Do, there we are very close to the transaction and just need to give a bit more trigger. And care is the after sales bit of the funnel where it's all about loyalty. C and awareness can be measured with reach and the share of voice, but I guess there are also more KPIs to speak about. We at GoEuro, we're using influencers to increase, to work with influencers with product placements and trying to educate our consumers and the customers about GoEuro. And we're using here the influencer and all his 3 principles, the trust, the social proof, and the liking, to also increase the popularity. We also want to start, as I said before, start the conversation with their community, which I want to show here as an example within the comments towards those product placements, that the community is actually giving the key messages we want to achieve, like buy train tickets and save money, use the mobile app because you can do everything on the journey. But of course, if you're not authentic enough in your communication, you can also face the problem that the community doesn't like it and see it a lot as advertisement. And I want to give you another example which makes it a bit more clear, and I want to be sorry already for those who might have worked on this campaign with Cora Lieb dich, where they use 30 plus influencers to do this kind of product placement, but it was not very authentic because they use fashion influencers. The caption was quite not so funny, so the community reacted also quite funny and built this kind of reactions. And even yesterday we talked about in the hotel bar about the fact, does it increase your reach and limited your authenticity? Or, however, I would like to debate that tonight with a beer in Beta House. Let's go one funnel further in the think and consideration. Yes, sorry. And think and consideration can be measured in brand searches and product interest. And here are 2 examples. iPhone and Samsung, everybody knows who they are, and they are using influences quite differently. They already have a high visibility, and they don't need to show their product in front of the audience, but they are working with influencers to show that the product and service or features is superior to that over competitors. So using photographer as influencer and take their authority shows that their camera is of a higher quality, and so they can show that they're better than another one. Additionally, they can also already provide that they have a community working with that, which increases additionally the social proof. I want to show you also two examples we do, but taking that from other channels to show you that to work with influencers doesn't necessarily mean to work on social media with them. And I also want to say here at that point already that to work closer with other departments like the SEO or affiliate can help you to get synergy effects. In this specific thing, we are very much into the consideration phase of the customer because he's already starting to search on Google like how to travel around Europe. And by placing your product into, or our product in that case, Go Euro, in that specific article leads into continuous traffic, which converts pretty well and gives us a good chance to also generate sales. Let's go one funnel step further. And here I would like to focus on stories for sales-oriented campaigns because you want to, in the do and transaction phase, you want to generate bookings or look at other financial KPIs. And with stories, basically, the lack of permanence gives already the feeling of exclusivity and limitation, which is pretty much said also in the copy of this advertisement. It also encourages people to take actions quite quickly because, as said, it's limited. So by working with influencers, you can also give or add more trust towards your offers because they are social proven by those influencers. We had a cooperation with an international high-speed train provider in Italy with an exclusive fair and worked here with an influencer or more influencers to provide or to share those discounts, and that worked pretty well so that we are continuing to work with this provider in next combined marketing efforts. Last but not least, the care and loyalty stage, where we think like it doesn't stop with the last purchase, but you can move on to talk with your customer and also in combination with influencers to basically interact with you and the brand afterwards as well. So we are using local influencers, so influencers who are based in a certain city to create added value content. And Karina might be here today. She's not. It's our local influencer from Hamburg who created a pretty nice city guide for us, is sharing that, and adds a lot of value for our customers after the sales. But Kat is going to speak about that later a bit more. So to summarize, we as a brand, we can work with those influencers along the customer journey and basically do that in different ways to start the conversation with those influencers within their community and benefit of these three key principles: social proof, liking, and authority.
But I think I think Torsten explained why brands are finding it so beneficial to work with influencers. But for me, as a community strategist, the question then becomes: should brands continue to just leverage on the influence of influencers to expose them to their communities, or is it actually possible for brands to build their own loyal communities from within? And obviously, I would say yes, it is. But it really does take a genuine investment in providing that authentic experience for the consumer and also being able to hold your brand up to its core values. So if you're a brand, and there were a few people today that I think are from a brand, and you're considering building a community of your own, there are a couple of fundamental questions that you should be able to answer before you do that. The model is very simple. It consists of why, who, and where. And when we talk about why, we're really talking about your higher order purpose. So being able to ask yourself, why do we exist as a brand, and what are our core values? And if you could answer those questions, you need to ensure that the entire organization is also aligned with those values, because if you try to fake it, your community will very quickly sniff that out and you won't get too far. And then we move on to the who. So you know why you exist, but who do you actually exist for? And do your values align with theirs? And if they do, excellent. You can ask yourself then, how is the best way for us to provide added value for these people? And this leads you to the where. So based on the person that you're trying to attract, where can you provide the right tools for those people to experience your brand in an authentic way? And how can you also help them to spread the word about your brand? And I think this quote from Joseph Pine really sums up nicely the value of community for brands. He says, "The number one way to be who you say you are as a company is to provide places for people to experience who you are." So rather than just talking about your brand and sort of shouting from the rooftops and saying, we stand for this, we are about this, you need to actually provide a place where people can discover that for themselves and experience your brand. And I wanted to just give you an example based on our own community. We obviously asked ourselves these three basic questions, and then we ran a study around our target user to learn more about their social media behaviors. And from those learnings, we decided where our community should live and the different messages that we'd like to sort of convey across those channels. So we found that sharing experiences was the number one reason for our target user to use Instagram, which is not very surprising, but still a valuable insight to learn. So what we actually did was to shift our content strategy on Instagram. And today we only post user-generated content. So doing this allows the community to actually feel like they're part of our brand story and to do the very thing that they want to do on Instagram, which is to share experiences. And what we've seen from this is, and we continue to see, a month-on-month growth in the channel and also a huge increase in engagement with our community. We also found that the main reason they follow brands specifically on Facebook is to receive tips and advice. So we built a community on Facebook called The Locals, which you can all join, by the way. It's a nice plug. Basically, it's a group of European travelers who are sharing practical tips about the cities that they live in or that they know very well. And at the same time, we're able to expose this community to our brand and in an environment that we can control, and also, more importantly, an environment where they're ready and expecting to see our brand message. And this is just a little example that I asked the community when telling them I was coming to Hamburg and asking where I could get a good coffee near Hauptbahnhof station. And it was cool because people actually invited friends from Hamburg just to give me tips on that. And if anyone has any, I'll take some later. And finally, what we found is that they trust friends and influencers to give them the authentic tips and advice that they seek on Facebook. So, as Torsten mentioned earlier, we're working with a smaller group of influencers who are our leading experts in those cities. And their job is to produce content based around their city and share it with their audience and also with our community to help us grow. So really, again, what we did was just ask us, what exactly do we stand for as a brand? Who exactly do we want to receive this message, and where can we find the best place for them to see it? So in conclusion, we just wanted to leave you with three main points for today. The first one I think is quite clear, that if you're considering working with community or influencers, you need to understand the role that they play for each other, because they're really quite interlinked and they shouldn't be considered independently. That doesn't mean that if you're working with influencers, you also need to work with a community. It just means you need to understand that relationship and how it fits into the funnel. Secondly, we think that brands have a lot to learn from influencers. I mean, we've seen this huge problem with trust that we face, and brands need to render an authentic experience and hold themselves up to their core values. And finally, it's a bit broken, but before you consider working with influencers or community, you should be able to answer those very simple questions about who you are. So why do we exist? Who do we exist for? And where is the best place for people to experience who we are? That's all. This is our Facebook group, by the way. If you'd like to join and see what the community is all about, feel free. More the merrier. So do we have any questions from the audience at all? Yeah?
You might be going back to one of the first charts.
Yeah?
You explained the relation that you gave us.
Oh, sorry. It's in there a few times. I'll just... Oh.
I somehow didn't get the idea of what is the value. So the individual provides a value. What is the value? I mean, that's the thing I didn't see so properly.
I think it really depends on who the individual is. So again, when we talk about the individual, it could mean a brand or it could mean an influencer. So that individual provides a unique value based on who they are. So if it's a brand, for us, we want to provide value within our community as a brand. Sorry, I just lost my voice. Yeah, I mean, the value is always attached to whoever that person is. So if you don't provide a unique value, then you're not going to have any influence, essentially. And I think that's why, and also building brands from trust is the reason that influencers are able to build this community.
You mean the individual could be a brand as well?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So, is it right that it's just the shift? Like, I mean, the individual is a brand, and like a couple of years ago, it was very important to sell an experience like Starbucks. So it's the left part of the chart, and the right part is that. So nowadays we need to focus on the brand and the community and what is in between. So how it's connected. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think today we're still selling an experience. I think that's the problem, is that we don't have a scarcity of goods and services. So rather than saying here's one product that you can use, it's like here's a million of them, but you need to sell an experience of that product that resonates with the community. So I don't think that has changed. This diagram is more about in the ideal scenario, what the individual wants is to provide value, but when they don't provide value, the community support starts to dwindle, and that's when they become the gatekeeper. So, you might see an individual, for example, working with a brand just to sort of get the monetary benefits out of it, and then they're not living up to what their community expects of them. Because like that chorale example that Torsten shared, it's kind of like, okay, well, we'll do it because it's funny, but their community is thinking, okay, what's the point of this? This is not why I follow you as an individual.
Yeah. I think it's also like the individual as an influencer, which also gets more and more to a brand. Their added value to the community is sharing their experience, sharing pictures, and letting them into their network or life as well. So they are adding value here. But if they are not listening to their community and like doing too much and not authentic communication, then they are also losing the trust within the community, which might be decreasing, less interaction and less engagement with the posts they're doing.
Just shows that the connection between individual, brand, influencer, whatever, and the community is becoming closer.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the point, that you really shouldn't think about individuals without thinking about the effect that they have on that community.
At the end, an influencer also probably just sits within a community, right? So it's always also influenced.
Exactly. Okay. Anyone else?
Hi. Thanks for your learnings, first of all. I have 3 questions for you, but the first 2 are pretty small.
Have some water. Right.
Yeah. So the first one is how many people are actually in the group, the locals group that you share. Second is how you actually got people to join, like did you also put media budget on it? And then the third one, do you also use it to post as Go Euro and maybe advertise like some fairs or special Groupons or whatever?
I can answer all of those questions. Okay. So we started the group a couple of months ago, and we don't put any money behind advertising the group, but we do work with influencers, and they share the group within their community, so that's helped us to grow. At the moment, we're sitting at about 4,000 members, and it's quite active as well. Like there's many posts a day, but obviously our goal is to scale that with the help of influencers. The second question was, sorry, where's the other one?
Got the first 2. So
oh, okay, good. Then the third one, do we post as Go Euro?
Yes.
We post as individual representatives of Go Euro. So we never say, hey, we're Go Euro, check out these special fairs we've got. We say, hey, I'm Kat from Go Euro, and then that gives a face to the brand. So it's not, it's a much more, organic way to talk to people in the community, because they don't want to see you just throwing brand messages at them, because otherwise, what's the point of being in a community? You could just get targeted messages.
And then it's stuff like what coffee is good in Hamburg, or do you also post like, hi, I'm Kat from Go Euro, did you check out the awesome fair from blah blah blah?
Yes,
with
definitely. Yeah. So that's just, I use it for my own personal use if I'm going somewhere and I want tips. But from a brand perspective, we really want to push our brand message, which is that we provide practical tips to help you sort of get, travel with ease in your destinations. So we really talk about public transport, how to get from the airport to the station, and we also share when we have provider offers and special deals as well, which does quite well in the community because they're all travelers that are in there traveling through Europe, so it makes sense.
The added value. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. I was wondering how you evaluate basically all the different things you're doing, like strategies, using influencers, using blogs. Like, what do you look at? Like conversions to the website, new registers, what's your evaluation there?
Yeah. So, as said, depends on the funnel we are looking at. So we are looking at the reach as well, but also analyzing the comments on sentiments. So if that was where we wanted to actually get, and looking also on the authenticity, and then looking on metrics like engagement and these kind of metrics. If we're going low into the funnel, then of course we are looking also on other metrics like bounce rate on the pages and how the user reacted then with the message and going down to the funnel. And then at the end, bookings when we're talking about promotions in the do.
Does it look like it's worth it, for instance, with the groups?
Our objective at the moment with the group is really just to scale the group in order to have a sort of sizable community where we can actually, eventually lead to conversions. So that's the sort of first priority, but with influencers, it does have a direct conversion element to it. So yeah, we definitely use influencers to promote specifically the app, to promote routes that we offer and special deals and discounts as well, and that works.
Okay, thanks.
Excuse me, how do you develop the development of the community?
Just quickly.
Where do you get the data from to observe this development process? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, could you just explain what you mean by the development process a little?
Okay, you want to expand your community, and how do you observe, analyze the development? How many individuals are in the community?
Ah, okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Data from.
Yeah, so he was just asking how we analyze the development of the group. And Facebook actually provides quite extensive insights for groups now, and it's developing all the time because actually Facebook is investing very heavily into Facebook groups this year. So there's a lot that you can monitor. You can monitor the daily, weekly, monthly engagement, and also that's customizable, and the amount of people you have in your group, where they come from, all of their sort of demographics, so age, gender, city, and yeah, no, not interests yet, but that's probably soon to come.
And Instagram does the same?
Instagram is not as well developed, but we do definitely have metrics on that as well. So we have, we have all of the same data on where they come from, how old they are, their gender, etc.
Thank you.
I think you're in the first row with another question.
I just got a very operational question. Besides the Facebook Analytics, Google Analytics, do you have any other social listening tools you're using?
Yep, so for influencer marketing, we use NeoReach, which is an American-based SLA. And it's quite good because they actually provide quite unique metrics, which one is influencer media value, which is a sort of calculation of basically how much it would cost you to send that message out in traditional media, and depending on how much you've paid for that influencer, it sort of calculates it based on that. So you can see, are you getting more value out of this influencer than you would have if you tried to push it in any other kind of media format?
But it also helps to analyze like the demographics of the audiences of this influencer and the interests they have in brands and stuff like that, to really see like does the influencer and its community fit also to the message and the message you want to send basically.
It's quite granular, so it goes into like some very creepy details, like the income of their audience and all of their interests and whether they're married or single or
Of course, you always have to leverage that, like how trustworthy those data is, but it gives you at least an insight to also not run into like fake accounts or these kind of problematics, which were recently discussed quite heavily also in the German media. More questions?
All right, well, it's probably lunchtime, so...
Thank you all for coming.
Thanks a lot.
Have a great day and see you later.